Hi ladies, how are things? I hope you got on okay with the breathing system. I think that's kind of an easy enough topic to go through on your own yourselves with the PowerPoints and with the biology bugbear videos that I asked you to look at. Now ecology is a slightly bigger topic, so I'm making you a little video for this, so it's going to be done in two parts, okay? So ecology part one is what we're going to go over now, and it's mainly definitions. It's not too hard, okay? So let's first of all think about the definition of ecology itself, okay? So definition of ecology is the study of living things and their interaction with their environments. Okay, so the study of living things and the interaction with their environments, okay? So looking at their interaction with their habitats and their interaction with the other organisms that live in their habitats as well, okay? Now, in terms of ecology, girls, you know, we're going to be looking at different organisms, and we're going to be looking at their habitats. So what is a habitat? So you probably know this from junior cert. So a habitat is where an organism lives. I.e. for you guys it's going to be your house, and then you can have things also like microhabitats, so where you spend most of your time. So that's probably more than likely for a teenager in your room, okay? And obviously if it's your mum or dad, maybe in the kitchen or maybe in the sitting room, okay? Now in terms of ecology, girls, there's three different areas that you can have habitats in, okay? So biosphere is the area on Earth where there's living things, okay? And the biosphere can be split up into three parts. So you can get three different areas where you can have habitats found, okay? So you've got the atmosphere. So obviously that's the air around the Earth, okay? Then you can have your hydrosphere. I'm sure from the name you can gather what that is. That's the seas and water and the lakes and the ponds, okay? And then you've got your lithosphere. It might be a little bit harder to work out what that is. That is under the soil. Okay, so there's the three different areas where you can find your habitats here on Earth as well. Sorry, I'm after rubbing that out. So interactions with their environments. Okay, now populations versus communities. So when we look at habitats and we look at ecology and we look at the study of living things and how they interact with things, okay, we have to look at populations and communities. Now think about this in terms of your own context, where you live and who you live with. So population, so this is the groups of individuals within the same species. So in your specific habitat, i.e. your house, that will be you, your brother, your sister, your mum and dad, okay? Whereas communities, then, you're also taking your pets into account, okay? So a community is the different species that share a habitat. So you maybe have a dog, a cat habitat. If you're really hippie, you might have a house rabbit. I don't know, okay? So they're the different species that share your habitat. So you've got your population, so groups of individuals within the same species. And then you've got your communities, which are different species within the same habitat. Group of individuals within the same species. Okay, now let's think about the environmental factors that impact where you live, okay? So that think about it in terms again of your own context, your house. So is your house dark? Is it cold? Is it loud? Is it bright? Okay, they're all environmental factors. So in ecology, we divide environmental factors into four different classes. We've got abiotic, we've got biotic, we've got abiotic but climatic, and we also have soil-based, which is edaphic. Okay, so abiotic, non-living. Okay, so that could be lighter temperature. Okay, so obviously, you know, whether something's bright or something's cold or something's hot, it's obviously going to impact what lives there, okay? Biotic, living factors. Okay, so that's the other types of organisms that live there, perhaps competition between the different organisms. So, you know, for example, you competing with your brother over the TV, or you competing with your mum over the last bit of bread for toast, okay? That sort of thing, okay? Climactic, I'm hoping I'm spelling that right, I just want to check that there. Climatic, I actually spelled that wrong, climatic, okay? So climatic will be kind of long-term weather, okay? So long-term weather factors, okay? So for example, rainfall, humidity, day length and things like that. And finally, edaphic is soil based. So what's the pH of the soil? Is it sandy soil? Is it loam based soil? Is it nutritious soil that can grow a lot of things? That's obviously going to impact things too, okay? Now, in terms of habitats, one that is mentioned when going through this topic is aquatic habitats, because they're really unusual and they have very specific things that they have to deal with, okay? So aquatic habitats, so they have to deal with tidal issues. So organisms that live in aquatic habitats, they need to deal with, you know, sometimes they'll be in water, sometimes they'll be out of water, okay? They need to deal with that. They need to deal with waves, okay? They have to deal sometimes with salinity. So for example, if it can be very salty in obviously seawater, okay? Whereas in the estuary, sometimes some portion of the day will be salty and some portion of the day will be more will be more pure water, okay? So organisms have to be able to deal with those changes in salinity and make sure that they're not affected by osmosis. So there's some kind of key issues that aquatic organisms have to deal with. So they will have to have what are called very specific adaptations to deal with that. So for example, seaweed, if you go to your beach, you'll see bladderwrack, which is a type of seaweed that has little bubbles on it, little bubbles of air, which are essentially little flotation devices that allow the seaweed to float on the sea and therefore able to do photosynthesis, okay? Then you've got little things like limpets, like little shellfish that will attach to rocks and things like that, so they don't get dragged out with the tide. What are the type of things we have? So they'll have very specific ways of dealing with salinity and things like that as well, to make sure that they don't experience adverse reactions from osmosis, okay? Now in terms of conservation, girls, conservation, another definition that you need to understand. So we all know what it means to conserve our resources. So that's the wise management of existing resources. Okay, so for example, fishermen have to go out and fish with a certain size net. They're not allowed to use really, really small nets. They have to allow kind of smaller fish to go because they may not have bred yet. They may not be fully formed, and they're only allowed certain quotas of fish. Okay, so we have to kind of make sure, because our fish in our seas are a resource, and we have to make sure that they're looked after and that we keep them well stocked. Okay, so that will be conservation. So we'll come back to that when we do ecology part 2 as well. Now, in terms of our niche, girls, what your niche is in your habitat, okay? So for example, in your family, think about the roles that you all play. So perhaps you're a babysitter to younger brother or sister. That's your role, okay? Perhaps your mum and dad are both earning, okay? So therefore they bring in money to your household. Perhaps you have a cat there that's there really good at catching mice and so keeping pests out of house. So you all have a little role in your house, and that's what a niche is, okay? So the role an organism plays in a habitat. Okay, so that's what a niche is. All right, now food chains and food webs. So these essentially show the flow of energy through a habitat. So they show what eats what, and you can have what's called a feeding niche. Now in terms of feeding niche, we'll talk about what that means in a second, but let's write down a very simple food web here, okay? So we can think about it like this. So we've got grass. You always start off your food web with a producer, which is something that makes its own food, okay? So it'll always have to be a plant, okay? That's the only thing that can trap energy from the sun, and always has to be a plant to start off your food chain, okay? So you've got grass, and then we've got a rabbit, and then we've got a fox. There's a very simple food chain, okay? So we say this is a producer because it makes its own food. This is a primary consumer. So it's a herbivore. Herbivore is something that only eats vegetables, okay, or vegetation. And then you've got a secondary consumer. And secondary consumers are meat eaters or carnivores, okay? And you might possibly have something that will come along and eat a fox, okay? So, I don't know, maybe like a dog might come along and eat a fox. And then that will be a tertiary consumer, which is also a carnivore, okay? So this is our example of our food chain. Now, what a food web is, girls, is a food web essentially is a number of food chains that are interlinked together. So it looks a little bit more complicated, but it's very similar in structure. Each arrow shows what eats what, and you always draw the arrow in the direction of what's being eaten, okay? And they will also have producers, primary consumers, and secondary consumers there, okay? The important thing is, girls, consumers cannot make their own food, producers can, and you always start off your food chain with a producer, okay? Now, a pyramid of numbers. So again, apologies, this is rubbed out slightly. So pyramid of numbers. So pyramid of numbers is useful because it's very similar to a food chain, but it gives you the idea of numbers in terms of food chains. Okay, so you draw pyramids of numbers like this, and I'll put up a little YouTube clip about pyramids of numbers in a little bit more detail. So here you'd have for example, you'd have grass. So lots and lots of blades of grass there. That would feed quite a few rabbits. Okay, and then the rabbits then are eaten by a small number of foxes. You'll notice that as we go up the food pyramid, the little steps become narrower. That's because you lose a little bit of energy at each step in your food chain. Therefore, you won't. 30 rabbits will only feed around 15 foxes. Okay, they're not going to feed that many foxes because energy is lost through excretion, through respiration, and through just essentially passing it as feces as well. So we don't always break down the full amount of energy in our food either, okay? So energy is always lost. So that's why you see this kind of progression in numbers here. So you might have like 2,000 blades of grass, feeds 30 rabbits, feeds 15 or 12 foxes, okay? So essentially pyramids of numbers are really useful because it gives an idea of the number of individuals at each step. So girls, that is ecology part 1. I'm going to take a little picture of this and hopefully the video will be useful. Thank you.